Hi, this is Cynthia from Cynthia's Chair. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about biting. I have a lot of parents ask me questions about their children biting themselves, biting other people, maybe when mom's holding their child, she's getting nibbled or bit up on the neck. Also have parents talk to me about a neckline that gets chewed up by a child, or maybe the cuff on a sleeve that they put in their mouth and they suck on and they bite and they chew. How do you know if that's a behavior or if it's a sensory need? Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit today, and maybe I can give you some direction as far as what to do next if your child is engaging with his clothing or with his own body or your body or somebody else through biting. So how do we know if it's a sensory issue? Well, one of the first things I ask parents is the age of your child. That helps me determine where they are developmentally and what they should be doing with their mouths right now. So if your child is at an age in which they're able to bite and chew, and they're chewing in a mature way, which means that their lower jaw is moving underneath their upper jaw, it's called a mature rotary chewing. And if they're doing that, then that gives me a clue as to, okay, is it a sensory need or not? Now, if they're able to do that, are they actually doing it? One thing I ask parents to do is monitor their child and determine whether or not they're completely chewing their food before they swallow it. How do you know if they're doing that? Well, one of the things I ask parents to look for is whether or not when their child chews and then swallows something, do they make a hard swallow? Can you actually see it happening? If there's a hard swallow going on, you might want to talk to your pediatrician about whether or not this is a normal type of swallow. Sometimes kids fool us and they'll pretend they're chewing, when in fact they're not. They're actually holding a solid food on their tongue and then they swallow it down. So what does that mean? Well, in a nutshell, if a child is using their rotary chewing motion, they should be able to chew up food, swallow it, process it. Let's say they're not. What does that tell us? It tells us that their body is maybe not ready for that, or maybe their body needs something else to help them figure out this whole chewing thing. So, for example, if you've got a child who is not chewing, but is at the age where they should be chewing up meats, biting through and chewing pretzels, those types of things, and they can do that safely, but they're still biting people and things, that might be a behavior. But let's say you've got a child, you've handed them a pretzel rod, their sibling or their cousin who's the same age can chew on that same pretzel rod, but they put it in their mouth and they just suck on it. They're not actually biting it, chewing it, and getting that sensation of pressure. So we're going to take a step backwards a second here and talk about development of the muscles, joints, and tendons in our body. We have a sensation called proprioception. And proprioception is the information our brain gets from our muscles, joints, and tendons. And there's a developmental sequence and time frame in which our body expects things to happen. So again, taking a look at your child and whether or not they're in that phase of chewing, if they're not crunching through foods, if they're not chewing meats, this joint right here is telling them, I still need that pressure. I still want to feel that. Not necessarily connecting it that it's because I'm not chewing, but I still need that sensation. So then you start to see a child who's biting. They're biting on themselves. They're biting on their sleeves and maybe sucking on it, and maybe using their teeth and kind of even pulling away on the fabric, taking their collar and doing the same thing. So if that's happening, you want to address that with your pediatrician and determine whether or not there is something going on that's preventing them from chewing correctly. So let's say that they're grinding their teeth, for example. That's another thing that parents will tell me about, and that usually correlates with whether or not they're chewing crunchy, hard foods. So if they're chewing crunchy, hard foods, they're probably not grinding their teeth. But if they are grinding their teeth and they're not chewing on those foods, that's the jaw trying to get that information, that proprioception from those muscles, joints, and tendons that are located right here. And if they're not getting that information to the brain still wants it. So then they start to do this grinding process. So one of the things that I teach parents to do, and on a very gentle basis, we're not doing anything hard or harsh, but I will tell them to put their hands right here, feel where that joint is, and actually give their child a little bit of pressure and see if that helps calm the grinding. It's not going to happen immediately. You may have to do it several times. And I always recommend that you use a verbal reinforcement with that. So what does that look like? You're going to touch their jaw right here. You're going to give a slight amount of pressure, and you're going to say, no grinding. They need to hear those words. Don't hesitate about telling them something negative. They do need to hear that. That way they know they need to respond differently. So if there is a sensory need going on, you're going to need to replace that. You can't stop it. You can't say, just stop chewing on your coat or your sleeve or biting yourself or biting me. You have to replace it with something. I'm going to show you an example here of a coat that was nibbled on by a child who is having a little bit of anxiety and using that anxiety to turn his coat and his shirt sleeves, the cuff on his sleeve and the collar on his shirt into a little bit of a mangled mess. It's not too severe, but you can see that there's a little bit of damage done here to the coat. So what did I do for that parent who asked me that question about what do I do when my child is doing this? Well, one of the things I recommended to the parent is they look for a chewy toy. And in this case, it's a necklace. And this is something that particular child chose. Likes this sport of basketball, something he felt comfortable with. He puts it on in the mornings when he feels like he needs it, and he's prompted, if he starts to put his collar into his mouth, he's prompted to put the basketball into his mouth, or prompted to use a word that maybe the teacher and the parent and the child are all comfortable with, to say, just to go ahead and chew on that. And that's perfectly acceptable in all settings. There shouldn't be any setting that your child is in that somebody's not allowing them to use a device something like this if they need to. There are lots of chewy toys that are available for children. I'll leave a link below so you can take a look at some places that might be helpful for you if you're looking for something for your child to chew on and bite on whenever they need that experience. But we don't want to punish them if the reason they need to chew on something has to do with a sensory need. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it gave you at least some things to think about, and maybe it's prompted you to ask me some questions. Please put those questions in the comments below. Please subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate that. And if you come up with some questions that I can help you with, I will produce a new video that will help other families as well. Thank you so much for watching Cynthia's Chair. Have a great day.